Welcome to Change It Up Radio with Paula Shaw. So happy to have you here with me today. And as always, I've got a very special guest to introduce you to today. His name is Jeff Blanton, and he's part of a movement called Conscious Capitalism. And he's got a lot. He also is the head, by the way, of a business entitled Jailbreak Leadership. So if that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what will. But stick around because Jeff Blanton is a really amazing guy, and I think you're going to really enjoy meeting him today. So welcome to Change It Up Radio. I am your host, Paula Shaw. I am a life transition coach. For any of you who are new to the show, I work with people who are dealing with change, because we humans need change to keep life interesting and for growth, but we hate the discomfort of the unfamiliar. And so my work is helping people who are dealing with change, which sooner or later is all of us, right? I help them to make it smoother and more productive. I'm also an author, the author of 3 books, Chakras, the Magnificent 7, which is all about balancing those energy centers in the body to give us better quality of life. I am the author of Grief, When Will This Pain Ever End? Which is, I'm sure, what most of us plead and cry out too often when we're dealing with a loss and grief. And the most recent book is called Saying the Right Thing When You Don't Know What to Say, which is a little primer in how to have a really successful and helpful conversation with people who are dealing with loss or emotional upset. And by the way, if you go to my website, paulashaw.com, there is a free gift there, which is a kind of a cheat sheet that you're going to want to have in your car, in your purse, in your briefcase, and it actually gives you sentences that are helpful to say when someone is in emotional pain, and almost more importantly, sentences that you don't want to say if someone is in emotional pain. That's on my website, paulashaw.com, and it's entitled 20 Things to Say and Not to Say to People in Emotional Pain. Also, if you'd like to get more information about this show, Change It Up Radio, if you'd like to hear past shows or information about being a guest or a sponsor on this show, you can get that information at changeitupradio.com. That's changeitupradio.com. All right, so today we're going to be talking about something that I have a feeling many of you can relate to. We're going to be talking with Jeff Blanton about feeling a sense of joy and contentment in your work versus just trading time for money. I think many of us, for one reason or another, followed a career path that just doesn't seem to be giving us joy, or just doesn't seem to be fulfilling or giving us the experiences we thought we were going to have. But we don't know what to do. We've either invested a fortune in our educations, or we've put in time and grade already, and sometimes you feel like you should just shrug your shoulders and just give in and say, well, I'll just keep doing this. I mean, I don't know what else I'd do. Well, there may be another alternative. And I'm going to be asking Jeff Blanton some questions in that arena in just a few moments, so please don't go away. So let me tell you a little bit about Jeff Blanton before we bring him out here. He's a recognized leadership consultant, author, and speaker. And even after attaining monetary and professional success, he found himself in a state, and I love this title, he found himself in a state of smoldering discontent. I can't wait to ask him more about that. He couldn't help but notice that as his career evolved, he was charged with accomplishing things with the help of others, but too consistently, they displayed a lack of engagement and satisfaction, and which is a widespread issue throughout corporate America. And I think Jeff was feeling similar things. Most individuals, he says, from his perspective, seemed to be simply unfulfilled and content to trade time for money. And that problem became the catalyst of his success. He began to make a point of engaging his teams and aligning them around a common goal that gave them what he calls a higher purpose. So he lives here in San Diego, so we're very lucky to have him. And today he works to help others actualize their greatest possibilities and make work meaningful. He's also doing some very important work with a group called Conscious Capitalism, and we will be talking with Jeff about that today. So, Jeff, if you would, please join us. We've got lots to talk about. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Paula. Thanks for the invite.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And I think I've actually succeeded in setting the stage of curiosity for myself. There's so many things I want to ask you about. But why don't we start with conscious capitalism? What exactly is that?
Conscious capitalism is a movement. I like to say it's a movement.
Mm-hmm.
Business movement's been around, I think, about 10 years now. Reality is it's been around a lot longer than that, but conscious capitalism kind of formalized kind of a philosophy to elevate humanity in business. And so there's really four tenets of conscious capitalism. One is the idea that a business has a higher purpose than
Mm-hmm.
just profit, providing the product or service that it offers. Two, around the values of the organization. Three is servant leadership. And fourth is stakeholders over shareholders. So as you know, in capitalism for the longest time was all about the profit, all about the shareholder.
Right.
And the philosophy here, everyone that touches the business should be being fulfilled in the work that they do. So from the customer, the employees, and everyone else.
So, I've heard too that a lot of businesses these days are wanting to be engaged in activities other than just money making, or maybe even aligning with a nonprofit or some group that is doing something out there to make the world a better place. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, there's a movement that's been going on for some time. You know, the corporate social responsibilities, like one of the terms that they use.
Mm-hmm.
That is a piece of what we're talking about, and it's a good piece.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, more often than not, it's the marketing department decides, yeah, we donate a little money to this organization and
Right.
put it up on a big billboard. The millennials will love us and they'll buy our product, and so there's some value in that, but not necessarily the level we're looking for. You
Yeah.
as the employee, did that change your outlook? So we're really looking for something a little more significant than that, but that is a piece of it.
And how did this whole thing begin? The whole conscious capitalism mentality.
Well, we know Whole Foods. Well, John Mackey, who's the CEO of Whole Foods, had his own sort of moment in time back earlier on in the early story of Whole Foods. They had some sort of crisis in the town that he was in.
Uh-huh.
Essentially looked like he was going to lose his whole business, but then the whole town rallied around him to help, get the business back up. And all of a sudden he started to have this big realization like, wow, there's actually people, in this
Yeah,
business.
yeah.
And, if you treat the people right, amazing things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so he started to look to run his business a little differently. And then he got connected with another professor at, I think, Harvard or MIT, one of those, and they wrote the book Conscious Capitalism and came up with these four tenets, which actually
Ah.
put words to what a lot of people are already doing. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like I say, we like to call it the unconscious conscious capitalist. It's like already leading from the perspective of people being the priority in the business, but just never put words to it before.
Yeah. So is conscious capitalism actually a group, or is it a concept? What exactly is it?
It's a nonprofit organization. It's
Ah,
international.
okay.
Really focuses on middle manager level, kind of we call it the senior leadership group. looking for companies that have like 5 million in revenue, 100 employees up kind of thing,
Oh.
where we bring people together to really talk about what are the concepts, how are you applying them in your business, sharing of information, is kind of creating a kind of your own little tribe around this. But we're trying to take that movement a little bigger here locally in San Diego. I was in a
Mm-hmm.
meeting just yesterday with the Better Business Bureau,
Mm-hmm.
who again is what we would call a conscious business. B Corp, which is a whole nother conversation of like-minded people. So we're really looking to gather people that are already doing this, already believe in this, and how do
Mm-hmm.
we come together to put on programs, help each other, elevate what we're doing to have a big impact in our city. My belief is that we can use the influence of business to really change our community in a positive way.
I love that idea. Can you give us like an example? How would a business change the community in a positive way?
Well, one of the ways you just described was, embracing some sort of activities that you're going to do to help
Mm-hmm.
improve it, right? So, an example, what I would see that'd be more positive, rather than my company saying, "Okay, well, I'm gonna do something around homelessness," right? So we do some work on that. Well, what
Right.
if we got 5, 6, 10 businesses all doing that? Now you got a lot of
Yes.
power, you got a little oomph. The value in this is that as long as you're like inviting your employees to be part of that conversation, right? Get
Mm-hmm.
them involved in this thing, so then they're
Mm-hmm.
having a higher purpose around what they're doing as well. So that's an example where we can kind of collaborate on that idea to have a bigger impact.
So, is this kind of moving away from that top down kind of management that was so traditional in corporations?
Yes, I have a philosophy that the higher purpose of the organization does come from the leader of the
Uh huh.
organization, that their
Okay.
personal purpose helps inform
Mm-hmm.
the higher purpose of the organization. And then what happens is that you invite people into that idea. So when you in my introduction, you said Jeff learned that if you told a bigger story, you invited people in. So it's really the same idea. So if you think of like an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs, they invited people into a bigger story than
Mm-hmm.
just, oh, we're making cars, right? No, we're making a certain kind of car because we have a problem with our environment. We're
Yes.
building rockets because we got to get out of here, right? So you're inviting people into it, right? You're inviting people into a story that they start to go, oh, I could get behind that. And so it's
Yeah.
not just your employees, but your customers say, oh, I believe in this company. I believe what they're doing. I believe how they do it. I believe how they manage. So
Mm-hmm.
the higher purpose can show up in many different ways. And like I said, I believe it's informed by the leader. So from that perspective, I believe it's a top-down idea that you're inviting
Mm-hmm.
people into this bigger idea of your business. Most people start a company for some reason beyond just I wanted a job.
Right.
They thought something bigger needed to be fixed, but
Sure.
often that gets lost along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought up as capitalists, right? It's about the bottom line. It's always about the bottom line. And the truth be
Exactly.
told, Paula, is like you make more money. It only makes sense if your company will be as successful as your stakeholders make you. So
Mm-hmm.
the more engaged your stakeholders are, guess what? The more money you make. So it's a win-win scenario.
Isn't
But you
that
have to believe.
what Google did, providing this fabulous environment for the employees and trying to give them experiences that were more satisfying than just here's what you need to do kind of a thing. Is
Right,
that
but it has
an
to go beyond.
example?
Like any company can give you well, we got the beer tap in the corner, or we got right.
Yeah.
Anyone can do that. That's the easy stuff, and
Ah,
that was kind of trick and interesting at the time. But the newer, younger generations coming in saying, "No, I want to be part of something that has some purpose to it." I mean,
yes.
I think was it Daniel Pink or someone that said, the three things that make a person happy was mastery, being allowed to do something I can be good at, right? So
Mm.
aligning to your skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Two is autonomy, let me do my work, right?
Right.
And three was purpose, doing something
Mm-hmm.
that has some meaning beyond just me. So if you can create
Mm.
an environment in your business that you're creating that, then yeah,
I
things are
love
going to go
that.
well.
Well, and one of the things I've just read the other day, and I've been saying this for a long time, all humans want to be seen, heard, understood. And the other day I saw another word added to that, celebrated. And
Mm,
I thought that's so brilliant because when somebody is celebrated, they feel that what they're doing matters, right? They're
exactly.
noticed, not just because they're there and because they got the job done, but they did it well or they did it differently or whatever, was the reason. But I love that idea that people want to be
And being
seen.
recognized for what you're doing, right? I mean, who
Yes.
doesn't want to be recognized for like, oh, you made a good play in the football field? Well, same thing at work, right? how's it feel to be
Exactly.
sitting in the conference room when the boss says, geez, Paula, good job on getting that memo out or whatever it might be. I mean, you're going to feel like $1 million
Yes,
for looking for a few moments, right? Maybe I'll do
totally.
that again.
Yes. And I think, there was a time when respect was not necessarily something that the average employee expected to get. They did their job. Hopefully they flew beneath the radar and they weren't going to get in trouble, but to feel that you're actually acknowledged for your gifts or your unique contribution, that's a different level. And I think that really satisfies people in a different way.
Yeah, I have an interesting way of looking at this. See, your life coach and transitions. So you got the four circles, right? You got body in the middle, right?
Hmm.
So if you think about the Industrial Revolution, what do? We said, Paula, come work for me and be a machine, right?
Right.
Basically, that's what I
Right.
did. We're going to organize you to do a task, move this from here to here. We're going
Yeah.
to use your body. And then about the time I started my career in the early 80s, we had the big quality movement. And the quality was all about, if Paula's moving the boxes, she might know something about moving boxes. Maybe she would ask her, right? So this time we
Mm.
started engaging people from the mind piece. And they got the body and the mind. So this
Ah.
time we got those two pieces going.
Hmm.
I would describe this as sort of the heart piece, right? Now, oh,
Ah.
you're a human. You're not just a
Yeah.
body and a mind. You want
What a
purpose. You want to
concept.
be recognized, right? I mean, right?
Yes.
So that
Yes.
becomes, and I would say if we live long enough, maybe we'll see spirit. you know,
Yay. Wouldn't that be
yeah. If
fabulous?
we can figure
Oh.
this piece out, that would be the next level. Which, if you think about this, which should be the normal evolution of society and people.
Hmm. I love what you just said, Jeff. It's so right on the money. And I was just saying to somebody yesterday, in spite of a lot of the problems we've got going on in the world, it's a pretty wonderful time to be alive in terms of the opportunities that exist to be recognized as a human for human stuff, actually acknowledged and even praised for our humanity, like for women to be able to bring their children to a child care center at the business was unheard of when I was a kid. I mean, most mothers had to give up their careers back then. But, the fact that we're starting to see employees as humans is a great movement. It should have been obvious probably all along. And yet that wasn't the way it was all put together back then. And in that uh, corporation you described sort of as the industrial movement where you came to work to be a machine or to be on an assembly line or to do the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't think humans work very well that way. And it's nice when something that's bigger than you or that you really believe in or that's helping the world is part of what you do. It just puts a whole other context on it.
Well, I
So,
also think there's an interesting thing that's coming our way that we don't give much notice to. And over the next maybe 5 years, maybe 10
mhm.
on the outside, is the big technology movement. And reality
Yes.
is so many jobs today. You think, well, I could only do this job, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be replaced with technology. And it really
Yes.
is going to be about what's it mean to be human. I think it's going to change our education system and
Mm.
everything else, right? Because the
Ah,
education system was designed to put us to work in the day's model. So if you start to
right.
fast forward a little bit, we better get hot on this humanity part because we're heading towards a cliff. I mean, it should be a good thing, but we'll displace a lot of people. And what are we going
That's
to do?
true. That's very true. And we'll come back to that in just a minute, Jeff. We've got to take a quick break. So stick around, everybody. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Change It Up Radio with Paula Shaw. My guest today is Jeff Blanton, and we're having a discussion about, wow, really, well, conscious capitalism and really consciousness in the workplace, seeing employees as people, as humans, as much more than just the drones that are going to get the job done. And I think that's a fabulous change that's happening in corporate America. And my guest today, Jeff Blanton, is one of those people out there leading the charge. So thank you, Jeff, for all you're doing.
To
Thank you
be
for
here, trying
being
to get that
here.
word out.
So I want to ask you because I think this beautiful work that you're doing today to help companies see how to help their employees feel seen, heard, and celebrated, as we were discussing. This beautiful work was actually born out of some discontent on your own part, something that you actually called smoldering discontent. So tell us a little bit about that. What was your personal experience that brought you to this place?
Yeah, it's a whole story. I really started when I first started my career. I got out of college. I had this thing like, oh, work is going to be like playing sports. I played sports as a kid, and it's going to be kumbaya and charge the hill and all those kinds of good stuff. Didn't quite turn
Rah,
out that way,
rah,
Paula.
rah.
Yeah, I mean, like competing and that kind of deal. And
Uh-huh.
and I had my excuse me, had my first job, which turned out I really didn't like it. But I think the biggest thing I learned was I was in a sort of temporary position and was going to be moving on. So he kind of said, "Well, I get the next thing; it'll be better." But there was two gentlemen there. One was like maybe in their 60s. The other person was like my dad's age, and they didn't like the job either. And I remember when I was leaving, and I looked at Alan Warren, and I said, "That will never happen to me." Right? That was sort of my, that's just crazy to be stuck in a job like that where you can't go
Mhm.
anywhere. And then I realized later, and I got to my next position and really enjoyed that job. But I started to look around, as you said in the intro, and saw a lot of other people, just really kind of turning the crank, just showing up.
Yes,
I'm sorry, felt like a little drinker.
no problem.
So, anyways, I saw people just sort of trading time for money.
Hmm.
And so, as I got involved into more management level jobs, my secret sauce I realized was, man, if I can invite people into what I'm doing within the context of the company, right? A bigger company, I got my little thing I'm trying to get done. If I
Hmm.
can make my thing more important than the guy down the hallway, right? And people will be more excited to show up for me. I mean, that's kind of a win-win.
Yeah.
So that was always step one in the process. And step two was, geez, Paula, you're here. What can I do for you? And so
Ah,
all of a sudden you could do
wow.
something on my program that you weren't doing somewhere else. Well,
Hmm.
I'm just trying to get you to be more engaged with me. And that was always just very successful for me. So
Mm.
about 40,
Hmm.
midlife crisis. I've gone through some different, I started out big corporate and just finished a successful startup, but it always seemed like it started great and always ended in smoldering discontent. So, which was just like, when,
Hmm.
here I am again,
Yeah.
the success, the money just didn't seem to do the trick. So that's when I went through a bit of an exercise and said, do I just keep on keeping on? Do I do something different? Well, or do I do something bigger and better? So that's when I started my own consulting business. That was one answer. And the other was, I wonder what my own personal purpose is. And so that sent me on a track to try and figure that out. And I found out it's really difficult. It's not that easy to figure out. But two
Hmm.
novel things happened on the journey. One was all the early years, my discovery process was always about me. What would
Hmm.
make me feel good? What would make
Hmm.
me look good? And that never seemed to land. But then we got flipped that purpose is actually the service I bring to the world. Then also I
Ah.
could see purpose in a different light. And the second thing, a whole nother story around this, but I was in an environment where all of a sudden I'm looking and I said, I seem like these people all of a sudden being called into action.
Hmm.
And if something was needed, Joe would get up and go do it. Something was needed over here, Bill would go do something. I go, maybe we're already doing it. And at the end of my time with these guys, my thing came up and I went, so I think we're already doing it. We just never put words to it, which led to a process that I wrote in Jailbreak Leadership, which is, how do you discover your personal purpose in 2 words? So it's not a paragraph, it's not a sentence, it's just two
Wow.
simple words. So I use that process to help leaders discover their personal purpose. And if we're talking before, then you use that to inform the higher purpose of your company.
Mm.
It was a journey for sure.
Yes. And what a beautiful place you came to. But so I want to ask you a question because, in my counseling practice, I run across, I would say maybe the majority of people that I work with are not content or fulfilled by their career. In
Mm,
fact, they range all the way to devastated and disappointed about it. And so, if somebody comes to that point where they realize that they're maybe even moving beyond smoldering discontent, it's
right.
full on raging discontent or whatever. What do you recommend to people to do? How do people come to a place of action or know even what action to take that begins with that smoldering discontent?
That's when you need a jailbreak, Paula. You send them over to me.
And I want you to
Let me give
talk
you a
more
quick,
about that.
yeah, let me give you a quick example of what that looks like. And so
Please.
typically what I see is people post 40s is kind of like the earlier part of your career is always very success driven.
Uh-huh.
About 40s when you start to look around and go, wait a minute, maybe this isn't as advertised. So my
Exactly.
audience tends to be plus 40. And
Mm-hmm.
even 50s, because in 40s, you just still have kids and lots of things still going
Right.
on. So around
Mm-hmm.
50s, where people really start to think about this.
Mm-hmm.
So I had someone come to me. She had been in a startup for 13 years. So it wasn't a principal, but she reported to the CEO and it kind of run its course. And she's thinking about, I think I need to change careers.
Yeah.
She said, but before I do this, I want to make sure I do the right thing. I want to know what my purpose is. So she comes in, we do the process, and we discover her two-word purpose was clarifying perspective, which means she has no problem walking in the middle, two people arguing, right? That's just her. She's kind of this grandmotherly person. No one would hit her or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but she just has that ability to help people see each other's side of the story.
Yeah.
So what we do is we do the work, and I said, well, if you're already doing it, go live life. And let's see if that's actually what's happening. And if those are the right words for it. She comes back a week later and I said, so Cheryl, what happened? She goes, just this morning, I clarified perspective from my granddaughter who was arguing with the girl up the street. Right. So that was number one. And I said, what about number two? And she's about work. And she says, Jeff, you would not believe how often I clarify perspective at work. She had just never realized what she was doing, right? I mean, she was naturally doing it, but not really realizing the impact that she was having. So she went from, I'm going to leave this company to go do something else, to taking what she was doing, reframing it, right? Just go, now I see what I'm doing. And how do I lean into that more than I was doing before?
Right.
And the interesting part of the story was 6 months later, she got a 30% raise for doing the exact same job. I mean, that just doesn't happen in corporate America. So other people said, wow, Cheryl, what's going on over there? So often it isn't about quitting your job and starting something new. Often it's just really understanding where's the meaning, the impact, figuring out what your role is in that,
Right.
and then reframing and shifting your work more in that direction.
That's such a great story. So, is there in your book, Jailbreak Leadership, is there a process that people can do to figure
Yes.
out this purpose?
I will say that it's in the book. The exact process is in the book. I say
Mhm.
it's hard to do by yourself because of
Ah,
jail. I mean, we know what we know. We've been
yes.
programmed this way for the last 30, 40, 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hard part. So um, I think people read the book and they'll call it, hey, Jeff, I got it, or whatever. And I go, oh, okay. But I find it's much more powerful if it's a facilitated process, just because someone else is holding a mirror up to you, just like in your business, right? I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
working things through and asking questions and wait a minute, you just said
Exactly.
this. How's that connect to that? So that's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to do by yourself. Maybe that's why it took me 10 years to figure it out myself.
And so, is that part of what you're doing in your work today? Are you coaching
Yes.
individuals, taking them through this process?
Yes, I
Oh,
work with individuals, right? I mean, just like the example I just described to you, I work
mm-hmm.
with corporations, same deal, but I
Oh,
start with the CEO because I believe the CEO
mm-hmm.
purpose helps inform the higher purpose, and that's how we begin the conscious capitalism journey with the companies. So that's the
Oh.
Jeff Blanton version of conscious capitalism. Is my uniqueness is this upfront piece.
I love that. Now, if someone listening is interested in learning more or getting a hold of you to work with them or their company, how do people find you, Jeff?
Easiest way, just drop me an email at jblanton@jailbreakleadership.com.
That's pretty simple. J Blanton, Blanton, at jailbreakleadership.com. Okay, and the name of the book is Jailbreak Leadership, right?
Correct.
And
It's
it's
my second book. My
available.
first book is Doing the Difficult, which is how do you execute big strategic change. So I'm a change person as well. That's what I was doing most of my career is
Oh, I love
big
that.
strategic change.
So tell me the name of both books again, and are they available on Amazon?
Yes, they are. So it's Doing the Difficult
Mm-hmm.
and Jailbreak Leadership.
Perfect. And I just have to ask you this name, Jailbreak Leadership, when I first looked at your website, I was like, what? So, how did you evolve that particular title?
I wish I had a great story for you. I
Ah,
really, honestly,
make
goodness,
one up.
I cannot even tell you where that came from. The thing I will share with you, Paula, is I spend a lot of time walking, pondering,
Mm-hmm.
journaling, and it showed up out of that.
Wow.
I'm a big
Well,
fan of that.
I'm going to read it, and what I'll tell you, what spoke to me was that a lot of people feel jailed by their career or their current circumstances, and yet the idea of breaking out of that jail is sometimes too scary, requires a lot of courage. And so I thought, well, it must be kind of about that. And I think that is what I hear you describing, that perhaps through coming to this higher purpose and getting really clear on it, we can break out of this mindset we're in that makes us feel jailed. Because as you described in the example, she didn't need to break out of the work environment, even change companies. She just needed to change what was going on within herself and her level of awareness and how she was implementing, right?
Exactly, exactly.
And
So
I
that's a
find,
very common result.
yeah.
I haven't had anyone pack up and move to Africa or anything like that. We have one guy leaving for Europe in about 2 weeks for 3 months, but
Oh,
other
that
than
sounds
that,
good.
most folks, it's an adjustment, and you know this too. It's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, you can go as big as you want to go with the change. So now with that information,
Mm-hmm.
that leads to what we call the compelling vision. Like, well, if you were to do this work, what could happen? Where would you go with this? And so
Yes.
depending on how big you want to create the vision will dictate how much change will be dictated in your life, which was what the doing the difficult book's all about. And
Yeah.
how do I go drive change?
All right. I'm going to get that one too. But I was just thinking this morning, and sometimes I feel this myself too. There's a song that I love that's currently out by a friend of mine that's called What If It All Goes Right? And one of the lines is, what if you chase your dream and it changes your whole life? And I started thinking about what stops people from chasing their dreams. Well, so often it's that little voice that says, well, this isn't a practical idea. This won't pay the bills. Well, now, how are you going to monetize that? That little voice, and I've certainly dealt with it myself and worked with a lot of people who have. And so I love what you're saying. It feels to me like it's a a way of finding the start of the path. Once you know your purpose, then you know that in order to fulfill this purpose, maybe you need to take this step or do that without necessarily knowing what's going to happen at the end, but knowing that this step feels right now. Does that
Yeah,
make
the
sense?
visual I like to speak to, like the first steps in the jailbreak priest is really just unlocking the door,
Ah,
right? So I'm in this jail, the jail of my mind, essentially, right? So I'm
yeah.
opening up this door because, well, this is what I've been told so far. Now all of a sudden, well, what if I actually truly looked at what was here, right? I got that
Yes.
option, but then that just begins the jailbreak journey. And to your
Mm-hmm.
point, it's a journey. Now you
Yes.
start taking some steps in a certain direction. The compelling vision is your kind of your compass, right? It's like, okay, I think I'm supposed to be going that way,
Mm-hmm.
and then away you go. You start to move forward. So one of the
And
things I
the
do also with I put masterminds together. So for the journey part,
ah,
we put the people together in a small group to start walking this thing out together.
oh, I love that because then when it gets scary, you have some buddies to lean on, right?
That's some people around you. Yes, yes.
Exactly. Yes, it takes a village, right?
It does. Change. Oh, you said it earlier. Change is
Mm-hmm.
not easy. It's hard and big change, a little
Mm-hmm.
change, and so what, right? But big changes really can be difficult. Challenge your
Yeah,
beliefs, challenge things that I never knew I had to give that up to get this. That wasn't part of the plan, and all of a sudden I got
exactly.
to do that, and can I? And
And
yeah,
it's so great to have like minded people because sometimes even people who love you think for your highest good, they need to try to get you to be more sensible, right? To do something that makes better sense. But what doing that thing that's sensible may kill you because it kills your creativity and your joy and your zeal for life. So I love this step by step journey that you're describing, Jeff, and I'm really looking forward to reading your books. So I'll be going to Amazon very shortly and ordering both of
right.
them.
So just imagine back to the first part of the show. Imagine having a whole company that's going on that journey.
Yes.
right? That's what we're talking about in conscious capital. We're not talking
Hmm.
about an individual making some decisions. We're talking
Right.
about inviting a bunch of people into a journey like that we're all up to something more meaningful,
Mm.
impactful. How do you fit into that equation? How do your strengths? How is your purpose? What's your role in the journey? So imagine having a company with 300 people in it all walking that out. Would that be a hoot or what?
Oh, that would be amazing. And we know the energy grows in numbers, and becomes stronger and more powerful.
Right.
Well, I love what you're doing, Jeff, and I thank you so much for sharing it with us today.
Well, I
And
appreciate the invite.
one more time, please tell people how they can reach you or find out more about your work.
Sure. So Jeff Blanton, that's Blanton on LinkedIn. Also, jailbreakleadership.com takes you to the website. There's some videos on there. Also, how you can connect with me or email jblanton@jailbreakleadership.com. One more call out. I have a podcast that I do called
Uh,
Conscious Curiosity SD.
ah,
And so I'm interviewing these leaders that we're talking about that are part of conscious capitalism and Better Business
oh,
Bureau. Any leader that's really kind of walking this talk, we're getting on the show and talking to them. What's their story? How did they come to doing this? And what's it look like? And what's your hopes for San Diego?
beautiful. Conscious Leaders SD.
Conscious Curiosity
Curiosity. Oh, sorry.
SD.com.
and where can people find your show? Are you on all the
You can find
platforms?
that any of the podcast platforms is on
Okay.
there, as well as you go to my website, jailbreakleadership.com. You can get to it from there.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you, Jeff. And by the way, in case any of you listening are walking or driving, don't worry. All of Jeff's information will be in the show notes on changeitupradio.com. All right. Thank you again, Jeff. Thank you to all of you. Remember, you can hear us on every major podcast platform, including iHeartRadio and Podopolo, the new up and coming, crazy, wonderful podcast platform. And we will look forward to seeing you next week right here on Change It Up Radio. Thanks for joining us. Bye bye.